I'm just going to come right out and say this is weird. It's weird not to see your faces. It's weird not to be in the sanctuary. It's weird to be stuck at home. It's unprecedented, really. And I'm going to be honest, I've spent a lot of this week worrying, thinking about all the things that could happen, trying to figure out what all of this means and what's all really happening. I've been worrying about our school, given the situation that we've been in all year and the circumstances that we've been having, and worrying about the students and their families. Are they all okay? Are they in good situations at home? Do they have everything they need? Is this online school thing gonna go okay? Are the teachers gonna have everything up online? Are the students gonna have all the resources that they need to do their assignments? Are they really gonna understand the concepts and the topics to the best, like they would if we were in the classroom with them, working with them one-on-one? I've obviously been worried about the country, thinking about the economy and thinking about people's relationships to one another, thinking about our relationship to other countries in the world. I've been thinking about my house, my family. Do we have everything we need? How long are we going to be at home? Are my kids going to get this virus? Are the people that I love going to get this virus? To be honest, I've been thinking about you guys the most. Are you okay? It's weird to think that, on a normal week, I'd see you on Sunday. I'd expect you to call me if something was wrong, and then I'd see you the next Sunday. And I wouldn't worry all that much that everything was going okay. But for some reason, ever since Sunday night, every day has felt like a whole week. And every hour that passes, I think about, are you guys okay? Is everything going on? And so many of you know I've been trying to make phone calls, call through the directory, make sure that people in the congregation are checking on each other. And I just want to reiterate and let you guys know, if there's anything that you need during this time, please reach out. You all have my cell if you got the directory. If not, put a prayer request up on the website. We'll be checking those. Reach out to Jan, reach out to people that can get a hold of me if you need to get a hold of me, or Pastor Dell. It's hard to know what exactly to do. And so I'm trying to stick to what I know best, which is remind you of the promises of Jesus, the promises of God, especially during kind of a tough and uncertain time, and to just be there for you as best I can. It's weird to know that we can't all meet and gather in the same place. But as far as I know, following sound advice from the CDC, as far as I know, I can still come see you if I need to, if you need me to. If you need somebody to go out and pick something up for you or drop something off at your house, I think that's, manageable. I think that we can still, for right now at least, according to the most recent guidelines, we can still help each other. We can still be there for each other. And that's a good thing to remember. Even if you're watching this at home and you're by yourself in your house, I want you to know that you're not alone. If there's anything that the congregation can do to support you, to come alongside you, to help you out, please let us know. All right, so if you're a Christian, one of the things that's always kind of going on in the back of your head whenever anything happens in the world, you have this thought rise up in the back of your head that says, what is God doing? Why is this happening? What's God up to right now? And I'll get to that in a second, I guess, but there's a story in the Gospels that actually speaks directly to this phenomenon. It comes from John chapter 9, and it turns out this story was going to be our assigned gospel reading for this weekend anyway, because of the lectionary. So the story in John 9 goes a little bit like this, but you can look it up in your Bible if you want. The cool thing about this format is you can just pause me and then go check, which is nice. You'll finally be able to tell if I know my Bible. No, but you can follow along if you want. I'm just going to paraphrase it because I know you'll be able to look it up and read it on your own. The story in John 9 is that Jesus and the disciples are walking along, and they come across a guy that is blind. He's a blind man. And John puts this little note in the gospel text that says he's been blind his whole life. He's been blind since he was born, right? And the disciples use this as an opportunity to ask Jesus to settle an argument during the day, an argument of the time. So it says, they say, "Teacher, that guy, he's been blind his whole life. Is he blind because of something he did? Is he blind because of his sin, or is he blind because of his parents' sin?" And we'll talk in a second about Jesus's response and what it means. But what he specifically says is it wasn't his sin or his parents' sin that caused him to be blind. But I want you to know in this circumstance that he's blind so that the glory of God might be revealed. And then, Jesus continues and says, look, there's only so much light. There's so much daytime. There's only so much time in which you can do work. Night is coming, and no one's going to be able to work when it's nighttime. While it's daytime, while it's light out, we have to do the works of him who sent me. So then he spits in the ground. He makes mud with his spit and the dirt, rubs it on the guy's eyes, and then tells him to go wash in the pool of Siloam. And so the guy does. He goes and washes in the pool of Siloam, and he comes back seeing. And a bunch of people that had kind of known this guy his whole life as a person that's been, born blind, they said, "Isn't that the guy that used to sit and beg because he was blind? Look at him, he's walking around, he's seeing stuff." And some people said, "Yep, that's him." And some people said, "No, it just looks like him. That's not possible. No one's ever heard of somebody being healed from blindness from birth." And the guy that was healed, actually, just anybody that would ask him would say, "Yeah, no, that's me. It's me. I've been healed." And they said, "Well, who healed you?" And he said, "I don't know. Where's that guy? I don't know. All I know is he told me to go wash in the pool of Siloam, and I did, and I came back, and now I can see." I want to talk a little bit about that argument of the day, what the disciples were asking Jesus to kind of fact check for them, settle a dispute, because it's pretty common thinking, in our spirit and our mind, there's just something about the human experience that when something bad happens, you assume it's a consequence of something you did. You assume it has something to do with you. Something messed up happens to you, it's because of something you did. You caused it to happen, right? And that kind of makes sense, at least logically. We think, yeah, everything's a consequence of something else. And if my life isn't the way I wanted it, it's probably because I can look back and identify some things in my life that I shouldn't have done that way. And, everything that's going on right now is because of something that happened before. That logically makes sense until you come across a situation like this guy who's been blind from birth. Because what did he do? He hadn't even done anything yet, right? So it can't be a consequence or a punishment for his own behavior because he hadn't lived yet. He was born this way. So the argument at the time was either he was stricken blind because of some sin that would eventually be his, and it is still his fault. It's just, God knew that later on in life he was going to do this thing, and that's, it's his sin at some point in the future that caused him to be born blind. Or the other side of the argument is it has to be hereditary. This has to be a sin of his parents, something they did that caused him to be born blind. And, there were rabbis on one side of the argument, rabbis on the other side of the argument. They were interpreting kind of life and text and trying to figure this out. And so the disciples bring it to Jesus and say, can you tell us who's right? Why is this happening to this man? Why was he born this way? And Jesus doesn't really answer the question. He doesn't pick a side. He just explains that maybe they're asking the wrong question. So what he says is, this man's not blind because of his parents' sin, and this man is not blind because of his sin. Now, he doesn't say why the man's blind. He doesn't say whose fault it is. He doesn't say who did it. He doesn't give them the answer that they are hoping for. But he does say something that I think tells us that maybe the disciples were asking the wrong question in that situation, because what he says is, you know, this isn't a result of sin. It's not someone's fault. But even in this, even in a man born blind, where nobody had ever heard of somebody recovering their sight, you know, all these years into life, if you were born that way, you stayed that way. No one had ever heard of any kind of recovering sight in this situation. Jesus said, even in this, you can see God's glory. You can see God's glory. This struggle to try to understand, to try to make sense of where something comes from and why something's happening to you, it's a real struggle. And I have, you know, a story from years ago. Aaron and I and Aaron's family got a chance to go to India. We were in Chennai for a number of days, and one of the days that we were in India, Aaron's father, who's a pastor in Indiana, and me, we got to preach in India, which was a wild experience. Obviously, we had a translator, but we got to preach to a gathering of believers in this village outside of Chennai. And after the service, after we were done preaching, we were all sitting around a little like patio table in, you know, one of the plastic, you know, with the white chairs, the kind that in Phoenix, if you leave it out in the sun too long and you sit on it, it just crumbles underneath you, like that kind of situation. We're all sitting around this table and we're eating cookies and drinking from a 2-liter of Pepsi together. And we're just sharing stories and talking about what it's like to do ministry in our different contexts. And while we're talking, people start to join us over time. So like, you know, 20 minutes go by and another person comes in, and then a half an hour goes by and another person comes in, and all of a sudden you look around and there's this group of like 30 of us, and we're all preachers, we're all ministers. But where the people were coming from over time were all of the villages that were far out. So after church service was over, they would come back and get together and encourage each other and tell stories. And I met a guy at that circle who had come from the farthest out. You know, it took him at least an hour and a half to walk to this church. His name was Luke, and he was a relatively new church planter, preacher, missionary type guy. And his job was to go out to the villages and to proclaim the gospel, to try to, you know, win people's hearts and minds for Jesus. And he told this story that I think lines up with what the disciples were asking Jesus. He says, you know, I've been doing this church for a little while, and I've gotten to know all the villagers, all the people. And after a number of weeks, this little boy started coming to worship. And it was so cool to see him. You know, he was really happy, really energetic. And then all of a sudden, one week he was gone. And this was relatively recently, according to the story that he was telling. Like a couple weeks ago, he stopped coming to church. Luke starts to ask around, hey, what happened to, you know, so-and-so, the little boy that was coming? And he learned that his parents found out that he was going to church, and they freaked out. They were super afraid of what the gods in India were going to do to them as a family, because this boy was kind of turning away from them and worshiping this Jesus. So they took the little boy to a Hindu priest and asked him, what should this family do to kind of avoid the wrath of the gods in this situation? And the priest told the family that the boy needed to walk across a bed of hot coals, that would appease the gods. So, you know, the very next day, the family prepares this bed of coals, and they force the kid to walk across, but the boy stumbles and falls forward, and just, I mean, the whole front of his body is very badly burned from you know, laying on the hot coals. So the family freaks out. They pick him up, they try to clean him off, they bandage him up, whatever. They take him back to the Hindu priest, and they say, what happened? I thought this was going to make them happy. And the Hindu priest said that the boy fell and got burned because the gods were mad, and that was kind of the punishment. So long story short, the family told Luke, you know, our son's not going to be coming to your church services anymore because we're terrified of what else could happen, what else could go wrong. in a situation where you feel like you're out of your depth, you feel like you're kind of out of your element, you don't know what's going on, you can't really make sense of things around you, you want to try to figure out why something's happening. You want to try to figure out why is it happening. And it's hard to know. We don't always have the answers to that. And, the disciples just asked Jesus, why is this boy in the situation that he's in? And Jesus doesn't give them a satisfying answer, right? He doesn't tell them what they're looking for. But he does tell them something that I think helps. Something that I found helps is Jesus says, you might not always understand why you're going through what you're going through, but he insists that it would be a mistake to assume that God is punishing you, or that somehow you merited this, or you earned this, or you decided this for yourself based on what you've done. Jesus says, don't assume that God is punishing you. It's okay to ask the question in a situation like this, what is God doing? But there's a difference between asking, what is God doing, meaning, why is God doing this to me? Versus asking, what is God doing, meaning, in this, how is God going to show himself strong? And despite what's going on, how is he going to do what only he could do? What is he doing in this situation? Not what is he doing by this situation. I don't know if the grammar helps make sense, but Jesus is saying, look, if you want to see God in this, look for him to display his glory in this situation. Watch for him to do what he's promised that he can do, and that frankly only he can do. One of the questions that I ask, and maybe because I'm a nerd, maybe because I'm paranoid, I don't know, but I've been thinking this since I was 17, which was around when 9/11 happened, I guess. Anytime there's this big event like this in the world, I always think, is this the end? Like, is this virus that's going on? Is this the rider on the pale horse? Is it the bowl of plague that's being poured out? Like, is this the end? And I don't know. We won't know until we see Jesus coming on the clouds, right? That it's actually the end. But what I want to encourage you with is, if Jesus isn't back, then God is still doing what he's going to do until he comes back. And that's Jesus's point. He says, look, we've got a certain amount of time, and we don't know how long that is, but while we've got time, we better get to doing what God asked us to do with the time that he gives us. Paul says it really briefly and really beautifully in Galatians. He says, while you have the opportunity, do good to everyone. Redeem the time, because the days are evil. There's some messed up stuff going on in the world, and you can redeem the time that you have. You can use the time that you have to bring about some sort of beauty, some sort of blessing, some sort of benefit. God can use you and your situation to do what only he could do. God's glory can be displayed in this circumstance. The answer to the question of why is this happening, sometimes the answer is the world is just going to be the way the world is. And Jesus said, in this world, you're going to have trouble. But take heart, because I've overcome the world. The world is going to do what the world does. There's going to be viruses, and they're going to mutate, and they're going to do what they do. And the things of the earth are going to continue to, in some senses, rot and spoil and fade. It's going to happen. There's going to be trouble. But Jesus says, I've overcome the world. With whatever time we have left, God is going to keep doing what God does. And so you can ask, what is God doing? As long as you mean in your heart, in your spirit, through the eyes of faith, what is God doing to redeem this time? What is God doing to display his glory in this situation? Jesus is going to keep doing what Jesus does with the amount of time that he gives us. Jesus said, the work that my Father has given me to do is that I might not lose any of the ones that he's given to me. And so in this situation, he is still calling people to himself. He's still giving to them his spirit. He's still saving and still redeeming and still leading and guiding. And so you and I, what we can do to redeem the time, what we can do with the moments that God has given us while it's still light, we can love the people around us. We can take care of each other. There's no law against that. The fruit of the Spirit is love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and faithfulness and gentleness and self-control. And against such things, there is no CDC recommendation to suspend or to cancel. You can still love. You can still pray. You can still watch. You can still study. You can still take care of people. And the extent to which you're able to do that, I encourage you to do it while you've still got time. There's a lot of disruption, this week, probably this month. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of fear. But there are also new, unique opportunities for us to do something that maybe we don't normally have the time or the space to do. And so I encourage you to just pray that God would open your eyes, give you creativity, courage, boldness, to dream up new ways to be there for each other in this particular situation that we find ourselves in. I'm going to do everything I can to try to still bring you good news and hope and the promises of Christ in the midst of this. And so be on the lookout for more times for me to check in with you. I'm going to try to call you. I'm going to try to make lots and lots of videos that maybe will give you some peace, give you some encouragement. We'll all just kind of have to figure this out together as we go and see how do we still be the church when we can't gather together. I want to remind you that that's not new. The New Testament went through that. The Israelites went through that. We're always able to be the church because we are connected. We are in communion through the Spirit. What we say in the Apostles' Creed is, I believe in the communion of saints. And part of what that means is I believe in the fact that we are connected in spirit. We are connected across time and space, that we are one in Christ because we've all been baptized into him. So I'm not going to be administering the sacrament to you, and I don't know how I feel about that. I wish I could. I wish I could be in front of each one of you right now, looking you in the eyes, placing my hand on your shoulder and telling you that Jesus loves you and that you're not alone. But I hope that this will suffice in lieu of that for a little while. And I pray that God bless you and keep you, that he make his face shine on you and be gracious to you, that he look upon you with favor, and today of all days give you his peace. Go in that peace and serve the Lord. Thanks be to God.